Hey everyone, I'm Jake Newton with CPPS, and today I want to share with you 3 gaps we commonly see in workplace violence prevention and intervention programs, and what you can do about it if you're building upon yours. So 3 things. One is in regards to the policy, the second one is in regards to training, and the third piece I'll talk about is in regards to the incident management process. So breaking these down, first with the policy, the workplace violence prevention and intervention policy. There's several things we want to see in a policy to be consistent with standards and best practices. So just briefly, I'll list those out. We want to clearly define unacceptable behavior and what workplace violence is for the organization. We want to address weapons within that and the organization's stance regarding them. We want to talk about reporting procedures and having multiple options available for your personnel. We want to identify how reports will be treated, understanding that they will be given the highest degree of discretion. And then in regards to that as well, we also want to put a piece in there talking about non-retaliation. So for those that make a report in good faith, we want to give them the confidence that if they do so, that it's not going to come back on them unnecessarily. We also want to address intimate partner violence and its impact on the workplace. So understanding that domestic violence or intimate partner violence will be treated the same as all other violence in the workplace. And to that end, addressing protective orders. If somebody receives one or if somebody has one issued, then we want the workplace to know about that. So having the policy outline some considerations in that regard. The next thing we want to talk about is disciplinary actions, understanding that there's a process there if somebody does violate the policy. And the policy stance for that matter, we want to avoid zero tolerance terminology. It can be kind of punitive in nature. It can be received that way and can sometimes diminish reporting. So we want to take a no threats, no violence stance as our policy position. And the last thing we want to have on there are in the domestic violence space again. We also want to talk about what support resources are available from the organization's perspective for somebody that is a victim of those sorts of things. And so that's what we want to have in a policy. So things that we commonly see not in that policy are those domestic violence issues. We often do see a zero tolerance position. And the third thing we commonly see is that, just one of these different issues will not be included or adequately addressed. So, not talking about the retaliation piece or having some of these things, but all of these things you want to have in a policy so that you can have a well-rounded perspective and a well-rounded approach for building the foundation of workplace violence prevention in your organization. The second piece is the training. So of course the training is really going to allow us to communicate the policy considerations, but there's 5 things when we're talking about training that's relevant for all personnel that we want to have in this training. First, it's basic facts about violence, discussing things like understanding that people don't just snap. Usually there's a process that people go down, and that's an associated myth common with violence, or understanding that there's warning signs along the way. We want to communicate those things. We want to educate people on the reporting options that they have and the policy considerations. The fourth thing we want to discuss is the domestic violence piece and its impact on the workplace. Domestic violence can be one of the most common ways that workplace violence manifests, and so we want to address that within our employee training. And the last thing, of course, is responding to emergencies. And so talking things like an active assailant and how to respond to those as an individual is very important to have in a training program. So those 5 things are what we want to see in a program. So as you can imagine, some things are commonly missing. Domestic violence tends to be a big one for that as well. But also talking about the warning signs can be one of those other issues that are commonly not included in the training program. So really giving people a framework for how they can prevent and identify concerning behavior, for example, is powerful, because then you're giving folks the larger spectrum of how to prevent violence and then how to respond to it if it does actually occur. So that's the training piece. When we're talking about incident management processes, well, this kind of insinuates that you have a multidisciplinary team to actually respond to incidents as they occur or when there's a report made under the policy. But this is in regards to the threat management team or a threat assessment team that you might have in place, and the process that they will take to manage an incident when it's actually occurring. So what does that mean? Well, the incident management process are the actions the threat management team is going to take. It's going to include some of the investigations considerations. What is the documentation processes? What are the monitoring considerations of managing this threat or this concern over time? And then, even some things sometimes of thresholds, for example, of when you're going to engage an external expert to support the threat management or the threat assessment process. So that's the incident management process. And sometimes what we see is this is not formalized for one, or it's just not there as a process within the program. Sometimes we'll see organizations have an after the fact conversation. An incident did occur and they want to just dialogue and report it, or maybe have a document that talks about the case that did occur. But this incident management process is all about the proactive side of things so that we can mitigate these concerns on a real-time basis and make sure that to the extent that we're able, we can prevent violence from actually materializing in our workplace. So those are three things that we commonly see in programs. If you're looking to build upon your program or have any questions, of course, feel free to reach out to us. Go to cpps.com. But we'd love to hear your thoughts on things that you've seen in programs that have been gaps traditionally that you've dealt with, or how you've actually embedded these different things within your program, and so we can all benefit from the community side of this as well. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again with more content soon. Thanks.